Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Steelfist podcast. Today, I am joined by Chance Ishmael, fighting out of Utah Misfit MMA. He's going to join me as we go over the recap for Steelfist Phenomenon, which happened just this past weekend on April 27th. Kicking off our night, we had Andre Stevens coming in against Eusebio Salas. Any notes or particular thoughts you had on this matchup?
I really liked that one. They both came out with a pretty good pace. Obviously, with it being a striking match, it's kind of what you expect, especially out of Andre. I've seen him fight before. He's got really good skills on the feet, and both of them put on a really exciting matchup.
Yeah, I was Eusebio. He kind of always is more of a brawling style. He's definitely bringing the fight out there. Really the biggest thing for Andre, UCTC having the Pua style boxing and just, they have really phenomenal boxers over there. Just training the boxing as much as he has, his boxing is really what, in my mind, won him the fight. He was able to keep the pressure, keep Eusebio up against the cage, where he was able to just utilize his striking a lot more and find a lot more success. Eusebio was doing good when he would make it a brawl, but a lot of the times Andre was just using his boxing and staying a lot more calm. Eusebio's defense was a little bit lacking, especially coming into the later rounds, which I feel like is really where Andre was able to take a lead on those. But, Eusebio's a gangster. He's always coming in and putting on a great fight every single time he comes out. Super exciting to watch him. And I'm excited to see more from Andre.
Yeah, absolutely. Both of them, they just kind of left it out there in the cage. They both fought a really good fight. Andre was just a little bit better at picking his strikes, being a little bit more patient, weathering through, his opponent's onslaught, because he came in pretty heavy, especially on that first round, just dropping bombs. But he was able to remain patient, stay composed in there, and was able to get off the win. So very impressive performance by Andre.
Yeah. Good job for both of these guys. All right, moving on. I believe now the second fight was Ezekiel Kikino against Brandon Bozeman.
Well, it was a good matchup. I mean, there were some bumps in the match with the groin strikes. Kind of the thing that caught me off guard is with the first one, he took a bit of a break, was able to come back out, and then on the second groin strike, he took quite a bit of a respite. Kind of took the time to come out, and then he came out and finished the round, jumping up, hyping himself up. Tried to finish out the round strong, and then obviously he just wasn't able to make it up off the stool. And that way, he didn't get the win with that one.
Yeah, it was really pretty unfortunate end for that one. Brandon Bozeman was doing really good about utilizing his range and his height. Like, Ezekiel Kikino, I think, is 6'1", and it's hard to get guys who are much taller, especially consistent training partners, and guys that are like 6'1" or whatever. But especially Brandon Bozeman, I think he's like 6'4". Kind of a hard thing for him to have to work around that range where I don't really expect him to be used to it, but he was doing good about making it a brawl. And unfortunately, in those brawling situations, sometimes knees and kicks end up getting to groin strikes. So sad way for it to end. It looked like, especially from the commentators, they were saying that it looked like Ezekiel was thinking about calling it off. His coach, his cornerman, his dad, or whoever it was, told him to try and finish it out, and he really only had like that last second in that round. I don't know if he had much more time. When you get groin strike, you have like the 5-minute time. I don't know how much time he had left to be able to recover for that. So it was kind of a, just bad situation. Brandon did get the win. He was looking really good for what he did, so I don't want to take anything away from him for getting that win. But I mean, pulling off for that last second, if he would have just called it off a second earlier, it would have been a no contest. Unfortunate situation. All right, moving on to our third matchup. We had Dalton Adesco coming in against Chase Thompson out of the dojo.
Yeah, well, I mean, Chase Thompson is a dog. I mean, even commentary when he was coming out with their walkout was talking about how mean he looked. Those guys over there at a gym, they're all really good. And then Dalton, he also put up a pretty good fight too. He had really clean striking. Both guys had really clean striking, but Chase was able to put that forward pressure, kind of put Dalton on his back foot, backing up, and was able to finish it out with some good body strikes.
Yeah, Fight City and just Desco in general, they have really good technique, like really good technical striking, and he was showing that. But Chase Thompson, formerly at Team Blink, he was Team Blink with his last fight, and he's transitioned over to Dojo. They follow the Bang Muay Thai system. Chase looked a lot more, technically clean in this fight compared to his last, but he still was just using his relentless pressure to push his opponent up against the cage and land the body shots. I think both of his fights now were finished in the second or third round with body shots, because he'll get past your range and just make it his fight. He's really good about doing that. Moving on to the next fight, which was Jacob Baird coming out of Empower, and then we have Fernando Reyes out of Fight City. I've always been a really big fan of Jacob Baird. I was able to go and train with him up at his gym Empower, and Fight City guys, they've had a million of them on this card, and I'm always big fans of those guys. Just their striking, their technical abilities, their coach, Josue Cedino. They're a super awesome gym. I was excited to see how this matchup would go, and unfortunately for Jacob, and fortunately for Fernando, he was able to get the win there.
Yeah, well, this is also one that I was excited for, especially him coming out of Empower. Very good Muay Thai gym. Their coaches are great over there. He also was training with my opponent, Chao Wang. I was able to see a little bit on his social media the way those guys were sparring, and they were putting in work. They all looked really good. Sadly, he wasn't able to pull off the win, but he did look impressive during the fight. I think he just had a couple issues, but other than that, it was a good fight. He put on a good show, and respect to both of them.
Yeah, he's always been. So one of the things I really like about Jacob, just watching him fight, he's able to utilize his wrestling a lot in his matches. He has a pretty extensive wrestling background. I don't know exactly what it is, but in his last fight, he was able to get the clinch, pull down on his opponent's head, and just blast some pretty sick leg kicks. His first fight, he was able to get into the clinch and use his weight to just drag down his opponent. I think really the biggest thing that kind of separated this matchup from his other two is it was just Fernando had a lot more activity in the fight than or in the clinch than Jacob did. So Jacob was good about engaging the clinches. He had a few sweeps and stuff in there, but when he would get in the clinch, Fernando would just stay a little bit more active, landing more punches, and I think that's really what kind of stole the rounds for him. Okay, then we are moving on to Carlos Reese coming in against myself, Darien Orvin out of Empower Fitness, Carlos Reese out of Fight City. This was a super fun fight. I really, he's definitely probably one of the best strikers that I've ever fought. Came out going 100 miles per hour, and I don't know what it is about me particularly, but people like to come in and try and beat me up real quick, and it doesn't always play out in their favor. So, what what were your thoughts just kind of rewatching over this one?
Well, obviously being a friend of yours, this one I was excited for, and also just the opponent. He's got some good fights under his belt. He came in pretty strong, was hitting you with heavy shots, but from what I could tell, you did a pretty good job rolling with the shots. So they might have looked pretty hard, maybe through other people's perspective or on camera. But I can tell you're kind of rolling off the shots, so they probably weren't as hard as it looked. But both you guys put on a really good fight. I think you just had the edge on technical striking and then being patient. He was really out there just to try and get you out in that first round, gassing himself out pretty hard. I think maybe with it being, instead of three-minute rounds, it's, 2-minute rounds, that he thought maybe he could just do it and not get gassed. But especially in that third round, he looked pretty tired, and that's where you were able to kind of start winning on the scorecards with your striking, landing good, clean strikes.
Yeah, it's kind of MMA fighters generally, when they transition into the individual disciplines, don't really perform as well, and I think that's something that they were maybe kind of capitalizing on or kind of open on, is that he would put me out there quick, and with those punches, like every single one of them was knocking me off balance, was throwing me around. But I didn't really have any damage to my face or anything like that. Like I walked away pretty well, no headache or anything like that, as cleanly as the shots were landing or were perceived to be landing. I know he does have leg kicks a lot in his fights, and I kind of took that away from him because I made him wear shin guards. I was hoping to fight in June. and I didn't want to have my legs be hurting so bad. So I told the promoter, I was like, hey, whoever agrees to fight me in this card, just tell them I'm going to make them wear shin guards in case that changes their opinion of how the fight's going to go. He agreed to still do it. We still fought, so I kind of took away his game as far as the leg kicks go. When he was throwing the leg kicks with the shin guards, I was able to check them, so maybe it wouldn't have had that much of an impact. He's a super tough kid, and I really am excited to see how his career goes from now on out. Even in the times, I think it was really just the conditioning here, because all the times that he was throwing actively, he was landing pretty cleanly through my guard and over my punches and stuff like that. Like, it was good, and he's super skilled fighter. So,
And one thing I think that really helped him is because obviously your height advantage, that he was able to kind of come up through your guard because you stand taller than he does. And so I kind of thought that was interesting the way he was implementing that, because he was throwing most of those kind of upward through your guard, which a lot of them landed clean. But I mean, great fight from the both of you, especially with it being your Muay Thai debut. Did a really good job on that, man.
thanks. Cool. All right, we are moving on. We had Sloan-C Rapone, another Fight City guy, coming in against Steven Dodson from Westside Jiu-Jitsu and Boxing.
A lot of Fight City guys on this card.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this matchup, I think, so I was talking to Sloan-C after his fight, just getting his kind of thoughts on it. And really, until you do it, you don't realize, in training, especially when you first start, you're like, holy cow, 3 minutes goes by. So, like, it takes so long for the 3 minutes to get by. But once you're actually in a fight and you're kind of comfortable, it goes by so fast. And you're like, oh, dang, that was like the full round like there. Like, looking back on it, you're like, oh, I should have done more. I had more energy. I could have done more. And that was kind of what he was saying, is that he was a little bit too reserved in there. He was sitting back a lot, waiting for counter strikes. Dodson would get in there and land 2 or 3 shots to Sloan-C's very powerful 1 or 2 shots. So Dodson was just able to get the momentum more in his favor.
No, absolutely. I mean, there you can be patient in there for sure, pick your strikes, but there's got to be a time where you got to implement more of your game during your matches, especially a fight like this that ended. If it was a finish, maybe probably wouldn't look back and be like, oh, I could have done more and done that. I had a brief conversation with him in the back after the fight. He was obviously pretty disappointed getting that loss. He thought he won on the scorecards. But other than that, I mean, he's remained pretty humble in the loss. From what I can gather, he's just kind of ready to get back in the gym, get ready for that next one, and hopefully just, up his game and fight the way he wanted to fight in his previous fight.
Yeah, no, he's a super skilled fighter for what he is, and super, aggressive, and he's able to use that aggression without it playing to his detriment. Like, so he's doing really well. Dodson looked to be, from perception, people sometimes scar more or bruise more than others. Dodson seemed to be in a little bit worse shape, but it was really the 3 or 4 punches that Dodson was landing to Rapone's only 1 or 2. And so, good job to both of these guys. It's not really a loss to be upset about. You learned what you needed to learn, which was that these 3-minute rounds go by really fast. And Dodson got his win. And I was actually expecting to see a little bit more grappling out of him than we saw, but still, it was a really fun striking match for what we got.
Oh yeah, that one was definitely a fun one to watch.
Yeah, Hunter Garcia coming in against John Smith. Hunter Garcia out of One Hit. John Smith out of Idaho MMA. I think he just trains with some of his teammates out there. John Smith, I think, is just kind of undersized for 145. He's jumping in there pretty consistently with guys from pretty good gyms. And being independent, he's going in there and showing his toughness. But Hunter Garcia was able to get him up against the cage, got an underhook where he was able to effectively land some pretty devastating shots, which was able to finish the fight. So pretty quick night in the office for Hunter Garcia.
And Hunter came in with a win on his record. He's 1-0-0. I believe his brother is the lightweight title holder, isn't he?
Yeah, Ammon Garcia.
Those guys over at One Hit. I mean, I haven't had much experience with them. I mean, I'm pretty local to Willow, so I don't really get out and train with other guys a whole lot. But he put on a very good performance. he was just able to get that finish. He got him against the cage, kind of got him curled up a bit, started landing hard shots, and then just got him to kind of sit down and cover up and got the stoppage. So
I was talking to John Smith after the fight, and it seems like he's wanting to go back down to 135. He might even be able to make 125, a pretty hard cut, but he'd be able to do it. And he was also saying that he's just trying to find new training opportunities because just out where he lives, there's not really anything. So hoping to kind of see him be able to get training with some of these gyms, even if it's like every other week, he's able to come down to Salt Lake, or once a month, able to come down to Salt Lake and get some training in with some different people. He has the experience for being in there as much as he has been, but now it's just time to start sharpening up the tools and working in with just different bodies and stuff like that.
he can, if he can get down to 125, I think he'd look pretty good in that division. Like you said, kind of oversized for that fight. In my opinion, was a little bit overpowered. Hunter definitely kind of had a little bit of the strength advantage, especially putting pressure on him against the cage. But if he can cut down to 125, I think that's a division that would suit him well.
And he's even long. Like, he was maybe only a couple inches shorter than me. He'd be considered tall at 145. If he's going down to even 135, he's going to be tall 125. If he's able to utilize his range really well, he'd be a killer out there. So just excited to see what's going to come up for him, and excited to see Hunter Garcia just continue to grow and improve. All right, so next we have Chance Ishmael, with Utah Miss MMA, coming in against Chao Wang out of Empower. So this was your fight. Go ahead and take it away, your thoughts and perspective on how everything went down.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely give credit where credit is due. Him being over at Empower, they work a lot of that Muay Thai striking, and he was the bigger guy coming in there. 185 is just not my weight class. He was really able to implement his size and his power advantage on me, especially with those leg kicks. He caught me on the first one. I mean, that one hurt a little bit of a sting, but I was able to kind of get through that one. The second one he threw, I was able to get out of the way of, and then he just landed one perfectly right in the middle of my knee, which actually tore my meniscus. So that was one problem that I had in the fight. And then obviously, when I was backing up trying to create distance, he was able to put more pressure on me and finish the fight. Only thing I will mention is, I've talked to even some of the promoters over at Steelfist about it. Pat and Kev kind of acknowledged it. He did get me in the cup, which I guess was kind of my bad for dropping, thinking that the ref saw it. I should have kept it standing and tried to, signal it to the ref in a different way. But that also had a big part on the finish too, because I was hoping that the fight would get reset because I got hit in the cup. But I mean, that's not the way it went. I mean, obviously, still props to Chow. He put on a good fight, and I'm excited to see what he does in the future. 185 is not something that I'm probably ever going to fight at. Next fight will probably be more around 155, but I'm excited to see where he goes, and then I'm going to keep improving. I'm going to keep putting the work in, and looking for a win on my next one.
Yeah, sounds like your perspective about it is really good. Chao Wang, I was super happy to see him just be more aggressive in this fight than he has been in the past. He looked really good, going from being independent and being with Empower, who, yeah, as you were saying, has super awesome striking. He's definitely on the up and up with his career, and for you, just getting in there and getting the experience and realizing, you realize protect yourself at all times kind of deal. And then, but also, yeah, just realizing that, he at 185 was massive and you were just quite a bit undersized there. So moving down, getting the nutrition right and everything to be able to go down.
Yeah. Well, I mean, regardless of the outcome, I still had fun, and Chow was super respectful, showed really great sportsmanship. I went back into his corner and talked with him and some of his coaches, super respectable guys. Never had anything bad to say about me, and I've had a couple conversations with Chow after the fight, through Facebook, and even still, he's kind of kept that, been super respectful. I mean, he apologized for the cup shot. I know he didn't mean to; it wasn't intentional. So I'm not gonna hold any hate on him against that. I'm a little upset that I got the loss, but it's my first fight in there. I mean, all I really have to go is up. So that's just kind of where my trajectory is leading me, is keep going up, keep working, and take this one on the chin and learn from it.
And now you've been with Twila Mixed Martial Arts Academy, and I mean, for your next one, you'll probably have been, getting a lot more formal training for a lot longer. It'll be, I'm excited to see you once you're able to return.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to do so.
All right, then we're moving on. We had our fight of the night, Jesus Avina coming in against Richard Mendoza. This was a super fun fight to watch for both of these guys. Big fan of both of these guys, and Jesus Avina was throwing in those fun spinning kicks and taekwondo kind of stuff. That was cool to see from a bigger guy.
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean, both of these guys, they went out there and got after. I mean, especially Richard coming out of brute force. I mean, he trains with guys like Ben, and I have some experience with Ben, him fighting my teammate. They ended up getting fight of the night that night, both put on a really good performance. So I was expecting fireworks in this fight coming from those guys. And Jesus, he went after it too. And I was surprised to see all those, spinning attacks. Those kicks were crazy. Definitely was my fight of the night. It was my favorite fight of the night. Both of them put on a great performance. Jesus came out with the win, but Richard still did a very good job. Props to both of them, and they put on a really good fight for fans.
Yeah, Richard Mendoza, just brute force MMA, super tough guys. They're out there, Uinta Basin, I think I could be wrong. But they're just kind of a bunch of friends that formed a little team together, and they train pretty consistently, so they're super fun to watch. And something that in this fight, Jesus Avina, he was doing really good with using his leg kicks and stuff in that first round. Almost finished the fight from a calf kick, dropping Richard Mendoza. Then he was able to grab the ground and pound. But really, after that first round, we saw him go away from the leg kicks. The calf kicks weren't there as often as we would like. Something that I had talked about before on the podcast. And so if you watch the podcast, often you would know this. Philly shell. Richard Mendoza kind of took a pretty solid Philly shell position. But being in the Philly shell, good for boxing, but it really exposes your leg for those leg kicks, and he was holding on to that, and Jesus Avina just was not capitalizing on those calf kicks past that first round. So that's something that I think I wish he would have kind of gone back into more a little bit, is those calf kicks could have made he still got the win regardless, but could have made it a lot more definitive and probably even gotten the finish, especially after dropping Richard Mendoza in that first round.
Absolutely. But both guys put on a great performance again. I mean, him dropping him with that calf kick. I don't know why he didn't go back to that after, the round. But, I mean, sometimes you just kind of forget about those things. You get in the headspace of, I dropped him, I'm winning. You kind of get excitement. Sometimes you just lose a little bit of those fundamentals and you just kind of go for it. But both guys put on a great fight, and respect to both of them. Can't wait to see those guys in the cage again soon.
All right, moving on. Our next fight, we had Hector Martinez out of Fillmore Academy and York Ash out of Cache Valley MMA. Hector, Fillmore Academy, it's not a real gym. It's just his little group he trains with. And York Ash is a big problem at 125 pounds out of Cache Valley MMA. I've got, I think he called for a title shot after this fight. And I'm excited to see how he does with it. I think he belongs definitely at the top of 125 pounds. His wrestling credentials and his grappling background that he has, he's shown it in both of these fights, being able to pick up these guys. Like, Hector's a really good wrestler, and he was able to pick him up and slam him on his head. His last opponent, Brad Kohler, was able to pick him up and slam him on his head and get the finishes both in the first round.
Oh, yeah. And York, he's a powerhouse of a guy. I mean, only being 5'3", he's got strength, especially with his wrestling, man. And during that fight, he really showed it. He was really dominant on the ground. He, especially with that guillotine he tried pulling off, that thing looked rough, and he was putting a lot of pressure on himself to try and get that. But he was smart, let it go, was able to get his hooks in on the back, kind of roll him over to his side, and sinking that choke. So definitely an impressive performance by York. I think he really deserves it to be up in that, title contention area. But Hector, he's a tough dude. You know, I went back and saw some of his other fights, and he's got a 2-7 record. But I mean, in the majority of those fights, he still performed. He still looked good. Made some mistakes in his previous fights, and he still had, you know, good fundamentals in this fight. I felt like he was defending probably the best that he could, but York is he's a beast on the ground, man. He knows exactly what he's doing when he gets down there. So it was a tough one for him, but
Yeah, I've got a lot of props for Hector. I think, a lot of his losses, a lot of his fights have been at 135 pounds. I think I talked to him before his last fight, and when he fought Michael, who's coming up here in a couple fights, he was weighing like 138 pounds outside of camp. So he was really undersized for fighting at 135. But at 138 or whatever he was, he's able to bench press 225 pounds. Like, he's super strong. I can barely bench press 225 pounds, and I weigh like 40 pounds more than him. So Hector's a super strong guy. He's a super good wrestler. I've trained with him before, and training is different than fighting. And Hector, while he's training, is a phenomenal athlete, super skilled all around. But just when he comes to fight, something is lost in translation. I think it's just the lack of experience of being able to train with consistently really good partners. And he also is just always fighting the top guys. He's fought Kawhi Thompson, who's 135 pounds champ. Michael Jamie, who is now going to fight Kawhi for the 135 pound belt. York Ash. His resume is filled with all these killers at 135 pounds. And now even at 125 pounds coming against York Ash. It's hard. He never turns down a fight. He's always taken these super tough opponents. But you develop by having fights that you're not getting, smoked real quick. Like going in against guys who are going to give you tough competitive fights, going in against guys that, even guys that you're able to go and beat up. You're learning things from those experiences as well. So I think Hector says that he's going to come out and train with me a couple times at my gym just when I have like public training and we bring in all the guys. So definitely think he even said himself that he's sick of losing. So we're going to hopefully see him make these adjustments and come around and get the win next fight. Moving on, we had Sitfeni Lakai out of Lakai Martial Arts, just kind of an independent trainer, and Eric Munt, also out of Fight City. So I have been around Fight City enough, especially their open mat jiu-jitsu that they have on Sundays, to know who Eric is and know his grappling credentials. He's been around grappling for a very long time. And Lakai showed in his fight against Bode Monson that he doesn't have the grappling experience. He doesn't have the training partners to consistently grapple with. And so Eric went out there, fought his fight, and was just able to take him down and got the performance of the night just with his grappling ability.
And that's kind of the rough thing, right? Is Lakai, he's got a Taekwondo background, and then from my understanding, a lot of his training is with his family and kind of his own gym setting. I know he kind of bounces around between different gyms to kind of learn, but yeah, he didn't have the grappling for Eric, man. I mean, Eric's a killer on the ground. His jiu-jitsu is just great. And I mean, Lakai's always been primarily a stand-up striker. He wants to go in there, he wants to land hard shots, try and finish the guys early. And Eric did a really good job implementing his game, especially getting him up in the air like that. I was kind of surprised because Lakai's not a small guy. He's tough. He's strong. And so for him to just pick him up, put him down, and get the finish with strikes was just really impressive. And I mean, credit to both guys. Lakai's a super tough guy. I have a little bit of experience with him. Definitely a dog in the cage, just does not want to give up. And then with Eric's just grappling abilities, it was a tough fight for him. But I mean, he went out there, did what he could, but I'm excited to see him come back and see what he does.
Lakai now, I mean, I talked to him after his fight against Bode Monson. I haven't talked to him yet after this fight. But after Bode Monson, he was working on his grappling a little bit. But with somebody as high level as Eric, I don't know if there's, it's going to be hard to work grappling so much to be able to cover that differential in skill because of how good Eric is. Excited to see Lakai back. I'm hoping that he's able to get around to training with some grapplers and stuff like that and just kind of cover that gap a little bit. It does make it hard when you're up against somebody who's that good, but as amateurs, we're just always looking to improve. I know that Lakai's been working with Flash Boxing Academy, working on his boxing. At least that was the last I talked to him. I think around January. So his hands are really good.
Yeah, I believe he was working with them.
Striking is really good, but and also this isn't to knock on Lakai, because especially coming from me, who also struggles with grapplers, it's just something that we got to do is work on covering those gaps, and kind of it sucks, and it's not as fun to work on grappling at jiu-jitsu. Not as fun as it is to work on striking, but it's unfortunately part of the sport. So
it's a necessity, man. You gotta work kind of all aspects of the game. If not, you're gonna fall behind. So I really hope he invests in getting his grappling to level up a bit, because his striking is great, especially working with the boxing coaches over there. That's who he's working with for his fight with my teammate Damon Hunter, and he showed really good boxing in that fight. He was able to put really good pressure. But thing with Eric, he's a beast on the ground. I mean, he would give anybody trouble in that division on the ground. But props to both of them.
Okay, moving on, we had Austin Atkinson, who is independent, coming in against Michael Jamie. I don't know how to say your full last name, Michael. I'm sorry, but Mike's definitely. He's kind of been one of my more consistent training partners, one of my main training partners for this past few months. And Austin Atkinson was one of my former opponents. I actually didn't train with Mike very much for this fight, just because I had a lot of other stuff going on in life. But Mike is so good on the ground, and that's 3 fights in a row now where he's just able to. I mean, he doesn't even this fight and his last fight against Hector, he's not even the one initiating the grappling. His opponents are, but you make any mistake and he's capitalizing on it with his jiu-jitsu so fast.
Absolutely, he's just so slick on the ground too. And I was back with Michael, in the locker rooms before the fight, and it just kind of surprised me how calm he is during that kind of stuff. Because I mean, that entire time we were back there, he was working on schoolwork. He was sitting there studying and was just calm the entire time. After and before I'd get my hands wrapped, I would kind of come out and watch some of the fights, and he'd come out with me, and we'd just kind of talk and about the fights. And really cool dude, slick jiu-jitsu, crazy on the ground. He just put on a really good performance.
Yeah, even in training and stuff, he's always super calm. Like, we'll be sparring, going kind of faster paced rounds, and he's sitting there singing and dancing and stuff like that. Like, he's just calm constantly. Not trying to rat him out or whatever. Everybody's nervous for their fight. It doesn't matter who you're fighting. But when he mentioned that he was having a little bit of nerves for this fight, it kind of surprised me, because he's always just cool, calm, collected, go in there, get the job done, and leave. And that's just his attitude. Austin Atkinson is a super great wrestler, super tough fighter. I mean, to this day, even after my fight with Carlos, he's the hardest I've ever been hit, or the hardest I've ever been kicked. Like, my legs were hurting for a couple months after our fight, because his kicks are so snappy. But he was, Michael just capitalized on his shot and was able to get that guillotine choke.
He's good at taking advantage of opportunity on the ground too. He's very good at just kind of going there. He remains so calm. He stays focused and composed, and I think that's what helps him a lot in his fights too. Because I mean, especially it being my first fight, nerves were there. That's just something that happens, and that happens to guys who are at the highest top of the level in the UFC. But he just finds a way to remain so calm.
Moving on to Chris Anderson out of 4-7, coming in against Dietrich Jessup, who is with One Hit and Vigilante Academy. Dietrich, I have seen him fight quite a bit. Vigilante Academy, I really love the dynamic that he has between himself and his coach, Teak Vigil. Super awesome to see. Chris Anderson, I've really been seeing him train everywhere. He's been at a Agima a lot recently, just training with those guys, getting his striking game.
Well, personally, I really like this one. It was one of those fights where both of the guys had their moments, but yeah, Chris Anderson was able to implement his game, and obviously he was able to defend that title that he wanted to hold on to. Both those guys had really good moments. It just kind of really came down to the ground game, who was able to get into those dominant positions more often, and Chris was able to get that, and he's really strong on the ground. So it was a good fight for me to watch. I like watching kind of those chess match fights where both these guys are kind of back and forth, both have their moments. But other than that, really exciting fight.
Yeah, the first round between these guys was probably one of my most exciting grappling matches I've ever seen. They were just constantly jockeying for positions, reversing each other, throwing up submissions and stuff like that. But eventually Chris Anderson just found his wrestling position and was able to dominate with his wrestling. Dietrich was still doing really well off of his back, trying to get the reversals, but Chris Anderson has showed us through his past few fights about how strong of a wrestler he is on the top position. And he was able to hold the control and just do a lot more damage, have a lot more effective grappling throughout the duration of the fight outside of that first round. Even in that first round, he was doing really good, but just dominance took control after that. So, congratulations, Chris Anderson, on defending your belt, and Dietrich Jessup. This was his first fight with Steelfist, so happy to see him with Steelfist. Hope we get to see him around a little bit more. And he's still also so young. I think he's only 18 or 19 years old, and coming in, and he's also one of the more active fighters, so he's fighting a lot, training a lot. So excited to see how he's going to continue. We're moving on to our co-main event. We had Thiago Angelon out of Renzo Gracie Academy against Beck Shields from Shields Combat Club. This one, so I was talking to Beck's coach before this fight, and Beck always has excelled and done really well with his jiu-jitsu. We saw him come in against Tyler Harden, who is the current 145-pound champ with Steelfist, and throw up an insane flying triangle that I have never seen in real life before. And so, Beck's skills on jiu-jitsu are phenomenal and flashy and super great, but he was coming in against somebody who is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, who's really just going to know how to shut down the best parts of Beck's game, at least in my opinion. At fighting, anything can happen, but that's kind of just how I was thinking the fight might go down.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was at with it too. Obviously Beck, phenomenal grappler, but Thiago, him being a black belt, like you said, anything can happen in a fight, but that makes a difference. And I also enjoyed that fight. The way he just automatically pulled guard on Beck and then went for that arm, really enjoyed that. And then, grabbing onto the leg, yanking on that guy. Beck was doing a really good job defending in the beginning. So it was an exciting one for me also.
Beck was doing good when he was on the striking. Beck's striking is super fast. He throws flurries of combinations, and I wish I would have seen that more. And I'm kind of wondering now if that was a little bit more of their game plan, is to try and keep it up and use his striking up until Thiago, pulled guard and just started chasing leg locks. When Beck was defending it, he was doing good, but then it kind of just became a fight of chasing leg locks and who's going to win, a black belt who's been doing this for maybe as long as Beck's been alive, or Beck who's been, training jiu-jitsu for, he's, I think, only with Jim Duality Jiu-Jitsu out in Green River, Wyoming. He's only been with them for a few years, if I remember right. So it kind of becomes hard, chasing leg locks against black belts becomes super dangerous, and that's kind of what we saw, is Thiago was able to finish out that leg lock, and last I heard, there was something with Beck's knee, his ankle, and probably his ACL, so hopefully, it sounds rough, but hopefully it's not a super long turnaround. Hopefully it's not super detrimental to his career in the future. I always love to see Beck, and I hope to see him back. Thiago Angelon called for a title shot at 145, but Coming on one fight, and also he missed weight for this fight. Don't know if he's going to get that. And that's also something that you got to take into consideration when it comes to the grappling, is if you're missing weight, you're going to have that weight advantage. And, that probably played a part as well. But Beck's a tough kid, so he still took the fight, and unfortunately it didn't go his way. So hopefully heals up.
Yeah. Well, that's what I hope for. I spoke to a couple people after the fights, and they were kind of telling me the same thing you're saying now. He's having some issues with his leg, and those can either be minute or really bad. So hopefully it's not a bad injury. Hopefully he can recover fast, get back in the gym, and keep working on what he's been working on this whole time. He's got a lot of potential, especially that division. And so I'm excited for, him to heal up, come back, and, just kind of do the same old thing, go in there and perform.
All right, then we're moving on to our main event. We got Justin McDonald coming in against Rusty Pearsons out of Rooks Combat, and then Justin McDonald out of Snake Pit. Justin McDonald is going to come out and do what he does every single fight. He's going to eventually get you down to the ground, and he's going to maul you. And Rusty actually did really well. So from what I was told, Rusty had to take a break from fighting for about 10 years because he had kids, but he did not take a break from competing. And so he gave Justin probably one of the I think this is Justin's second time in his professional career going into the second round. And Rusty was giving him a lot of trouble in the grappling. I think he took his back at one point. Justin was able to fight out of it and reverse it. But for being gone, he was true to his word that he had been training for these past few years and constantly improving. He did look undersized for welterweight. I think he says that he's going to go down to 155 next. But what other thoughts do you got on this matchup?
I mean, that I was surprised throughout the majority of the fight. I didn't really have much information on Rusty leading up into the fight. I was unaware that he had been away from actually, fighting for that 10-year period. And so I was made aware of that literally as he was walking out from a buddy of mine who was sitting next to me. And so seeing the way he went out there and performed after that long of a break is really impressive. Obviously, he was still in the gym working hard. Obviously, it just seems like he just took a break from just actually fighting. So he obviously was putting work in the gym throughout those years. And yeah, he gave Justin a pretty tough fight. I mean, Justin goes out there and he's known to finish fights fast. He's a tough guy. He hits hard. I mean, he goes for finishes, man. That's just his fight style. But Rusty did a really good job in that fight. Made it hard for Justin. So it was a good one to watch for sure.
Awesome. All right, so that is Steelfist Phenomenon. Steelfist 99. So Steelfist 100 is coming up next. Gonna do a lot more promotional stuff for this. Pat and Kevin have provided me with this awesome Steelfist podcast hoodie and some shirts and stuff that I'm gonna be giving away. So just stay tuned and stay watching all the podcast stuff, and I will just post, share this or something, and for the chance to get a free shirt or a free hoodie or whatever I have. I appreciate you all for watching. Thank you, Chance, for hopping on and going over these fights with me, and we will see you all soon. We're gonna be going over Steelfist 100 and just putting out a bunch of promotional material for that.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me on, man.